Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch, the podcast where two guys watch random movies thanks to the almighty algorithm. All hail the algorithm. And with me, as always, is the amazing, the incredible, the Mega Man to my Dr. Wily, Kyle Mulford. And I'm Noah Saturn. How are you doing, Kyle?
Mr. Noah, will you podcast with me now?
Oh no, not the Captain N version.
I'm doing good. And this podcast was brought to you by Red Bull because I need them to maintain the facade of being a real podcaster.
That's true.
I'm doing good.
I would love to take a sponsor from Red Bull.
Gives you wings.
Exactly.
We watched another movie for a podcast.
Yes, and this was a Studio Ghibli film, but not the one you think.
No, we watched a Pom Poko from 1994.
Yeah, and this is Takahata, not Miyazaki. Takahata was the other founder of the studio.
Yeah, and he directed things like Grave of the Fireflies and a couple others.
You know, the one that makes you cry.
Yes. So, but it was written by him and Miyazaki.
Yes.
A little bit about this movie. It was released in 1994 in Japan in July, and then Disney released the DVD in August of 2005. So in America.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a little while to get over here, apparently. But but I don't know if there was like a Japanese version that was out, and that's just when Disney finally released a DVD. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all we know. Probably was its English language release. So yes, and subbed or dubbed, my man.
What's that?
Subbed or dubbed?
They didn't actually have the subtitled version on HBO Max, so I watched the dub.
Yeah, I noticed that too. On a lot of on the HBO Max Studio Ghibli version, they don't have the subs for whatever reason. They just have the English dub, which is fine because a lot of these got pretty high quality ones anyway.
Well, and we can go into the. Speaking of that, we can go into the cast of. One of the main characters was played by Jonathan Taylor Thomas. This was mid-90s, so he was hot at the time. This was the year
around the time of Lion King.
It was the same year as Lion King, where he played young Simba, and I think so. This is 94, and I think Home Improvement ran from like 91 to 98 or 99 or something like that. So it was the middle of his Home Improvement phase too. So one of the characters, Gonta, was played by Clancy Brown, which that was one of the only voices where I heard it and I was like, oh, that's Clancy Brown.
Yeah, imagine that. Clancy Brown plays a military guy.
And then J.K. Simmons was in it. And then Oroku was played by Tress MacNeille, who is like a voiceover legend, apparently. You know, like most people know her as Agnes Skinner in The Simpsons. She's Babs Bunny in Tiny Toons. She played Dot Warner in the Animaniacs.
She was Amy in Futurama, you know.
Yeah, she's Daisy Duck in the new Mickey Mouse stuff. You know, like if you've got kids now, you know Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. She plays Daisy Duck. So, and there's so many other things that like you can look and go, oh, yes, I guess I do know Tress MacNeille.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kevin Michael Richardson is another one that's does a lot of voice work, and he played Bunta in this and the Wonderland president. And then John DiMaggio, who does a lot of stuff. Most people know him as Bender and Futurama. And then Brian Posehn was in this. And, you know, usually I can pick out his voice, but I just looked at this like in a couple hours after I watched the movie. And I'm like, I don't remember hearing his voice in this.
Forget, wasn't Maurice LaMarche the narrator?
I don't know. I don't know that name.
Yeah.
So I might not have written it down, even if it was. I don't recognize that name.
He was also in a lot of Futurama episodes.
Oh, okay.
And I believe he played Brain in Pinky and the Brain.
Oh, so a lot of crossover because you got John DiMaggio, Tress MacNeille. I'm sure Kevin Michael Richardson had to have been in Futurama too. He's in everything else.
Now we just need a Dan Castaneda.
Right? Who's one of the background raccoons. Just, oh!
That'd be great if it was just a Homer Simpson raccoon.
So raccoons, what is this movie about?
Well, these aren't actually called raccoons because in Japan there's a species called raccoon dogs, which are different from the American raccoon.
Yes.
So often referred to as tanuki. in Japanese. And if those of you who are fans of Super Mario Brothers 3, there's the Tanuki Suit, which allows you to change shape. So in this one, it's believed that
I'm
these
raising my hand. I'm a fan of Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yes, so in this one, there is about sort of these raccoon dogs shape changing into statues or other things, and that has a lot to do with the plot. So that's kind of just and a lot of it involves their testicles, from what I understand. That goes back to sort of older Japanese folklore. We're definitely missing some context. I know that.
Yeah. This gave a whole new insight into the Tanuki Suit for Mario. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, so he grabs a leaf and becomes this raccoon thing and turns into a statue. I'm like, what is this? Where did they come up with this for Mario? And then I watch this movie and go, oh, now I know what all of that comes from. It all makes sense now. I still don't know why it's in a Mario game, but like this, a raccoon turning into a statue and using a leaf to turn him into a raccoon all makes sense now from this
Mm-hmm.
movie.
Now we understand video games from the early 90s better.
Hey, I loved Super Mario Brothers 3 when it came out. I
It's
actually have it
great.
on my
It's great.
I have it downloaded on my Nintendo Wii.
I also have it on my Wii.
Get into this movie. We can wrap this up in a bunch of raccoon dogs have the woods that they live in is being developed into a new housing place called New Tama, which actually is a real place that was developed in 1965, and that's when this movie opens up. And so these raccoon dogs in Japanese folklore can transform into humans. They're known for being lazy and mischievous and all this stuff and scaring humans and all that. And so they try and scare the humans away from developing in this area. And
yep. And so then that times when they cut down the wrong tree, it unleashes like an evil smoke guy, or is that Fern Gully?
right. Yeah. And so they're just trying to stop this, and it's all about a message about, hey, the animals are out here too. We got to stop developing so much and pay attention to the animals.
Except this one definitely a bit more sadder note than some other ones.
Yeah, it really does. Full on spoilers because this is our podcast and we always spoil things. They really they end up developing the area, and they try, and it's kind of sad because there's some news reporters who actually find out that it's really the raccoons like scaring people and all this stuff. And he's like, he tries to get the story out there. And so when they develop it, they do try and leave plots of land for the raccoons, but it's not enough room for them. And so some of them have to scavenge, and then the rest of them, since they're shape changers, have to live as humans at the end. And it's really kind of sad because they can't be themselves. And even when one of the main characters at the end sees he's living as a human, and they see some other raccoons, and he goes and turns back into a raccoon to hang with them right at the very end of the movie. And then they pan out, and they're not out in the woods. They're on a golf course. So, but yeah, the whole movie it's 2 hours long. And I will say that's its only downfall is because there's not much to the story. They're trying to develop, so the raccoons try and scare them. Then they're trying to develop some more, and then the raccoons try and scare them again. And like it kind of like
does feel episodic in that nature.
Yeah, and it really does. And it kind of, although the different things they did to try and scare off the humans were kind of fun, in between, since they did it so many times, it got a little like repetitious.
And there are some great sequences. There's like sort of the giant monster sequence where all the Tanuki work together to try and attack and like scare them off with these crazy monsters and stuff. A lot of them going back from more Japanese folklore.
Yeah, and I think when they do the whole there's those whole sequence where they do a monster parade, and apparently there's a lot of other Studio Ghibli like characters in there, like the witch from Kiki's Delivery Service, and then like Porco Rosso's plane is supposed to be in there somewhere, and all of this stuff. So
it's fun.
Yeah, and I didn't read this till afterwards, so I didn't look out for those. But yeah, there's not a lot to talk about plot wise because, like I said, it's just kind of like lather, rinse, repeat. But I do agree, like some of the fun sequences are good to talk about, because there's another one where some of them go out and there's a policeman on a bike and he sees a woman crying. And this part was kind of creepy, but really fun. And he stops and she's like crying, but then all of a sudden she starts laughing and he's like, well, what's going on? And she just goes, I have no face. And her face just melts off. So then he runs screaming, and then he runs to another cop and, oh, I just saw something. Oh my God, it's so crazy. And this woman is out there and he's like, did she look like this? And he takes off his face and then he runs to a gas station or something. And everybody in there just turns to him and goes, did she look like this? And all their faces go.
There are a lot of fun sequences, and I really enjoyed it for that. And also, I like the sequence where it's like two of the Tanuki turn into like these weird babies that like fly around and mess with more construction workers.
Oh, the twins, yes.
Yeah.
It's like the twin girls from The Shining.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it probably goes deeper than that to specific folklore and legends that we're probably missing.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of if you grew up in Japan with their kind of folklore, kind of like, when we watch movies, we go, oh, that's this, fairy tale, this fairy tale, this fairy tale. They probably have a lot of folklore. They're watching this movie and getting more out of it, going, oh, that's a reference to this and this. But, cultural differences, we probably just don't know what they're talking about there. But it still makes for interesting sequences. So it still works.
There's still great imagery and great animation, because as always, it's gorgeous. And then also, for some reason, once again, context missing, the Tanuki use their ball sacks to help transform or in combat.
My favorite scene, my favorite thing about that is that they don't change the animation for the American version, and yet they dub over with every time they say something, they call it their pouch. And I'm like, we can clearly see the way you drew it, that it's their nutsack. It's not a pouch. It's their freaking nutsack. Mm-hmm. And my favorite part was, so the woods are going, and only some raccoon dogs, which they just, in the American version also, they just call them raccoons. Some of the raccoons can change shape, and that's like, but they've been out of practice because, once humans got used to them doing that, then they started like hunting them down and stuff like that. So they kind of stopped doing it in front of humans. And now they're like, oh, we need to train so we can scare these developers away because they're taking away our land. So that's a lot of the movie too, is them training and all this stuff. And one old raccoon shows the power of his. He goes, oh, this carpet that all of you students are sitting on, it's really my pouch. And then he sucks it up under his under his clothes. I'm just like, y'all were sitting on his nutsack. That's
once again, this is just out of context, so we have to stress that. But it is funny.
Out of context or watching the movie, I'm sorry, it's still a bunch of students sitting on his nutsack. So I don't know what kind of context you
don't forget his nutsack is then turned into a ship.
Yes,
at the very end.
I will say, I do like, though, that there are different personalities. Like, they really did have different characters in here, because you've got like two clans of raccoons, and one's led by the Clancy Brown guy, Gonta. And he's more like, oh, let's kill all the humans. And then the other group is like, oh, no, we need to scare them off or whatever. We have to come up with a plan. And they send a couple of people off to different islands in Japan to bring back master shapeshifters. And so then there's all of this conflict going on within the group all the time. But I love that the running gag, though, is no matter how much they conflict with each other, they always end up like coming together to talk about food, because that's all they can think about is having celebrations and eating food, because anytime they have a small victory, they'll celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here for that.
Yeah, so they did good with the different characters and stuff, and different motivations and all that. And like at the end, when they parachuted or nutsack shooted over the bad guys, and the more militaristic group went and actually fought the humans, and most of them died, and And that was kind of sad. And that kind of led into the end where it's like, oh, like a bunch of them died. A bunch of them had to live as humans. And if the ones who couldn't shape change, like, then one of them was an older one who was one of the masters, and he's like 999 years old. And he finally went senile and he became senile and started a Buddhist dancing cult.
Nice.
And then at the end of the movie, his whole dancing Buddhist dancing cult, raccoons who couldn't shape change, jumped onto his nutsack sailboat, and they sailed off into the sunset and off to their death, basically.
But they partied the whole way.
But they partied the whole way to Nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a guy, old man go senile. You had like some that just kind of lived their lives as raccoons, as much of a struggle as it was. Some that decided to do the whole live like a human thing. Because the other thing is in Japanese folklore is that foxes are, or as they call them, kitsune. Is that?
Yeah, that's Japanese for fox.
Yeah. So I hope I pronounced that right. Foxes can shape change too, but just like, we always say sly as a fox, they're also, they shape change in the folklore, they shape change to deceive humans and trick them into doing things, where raccoons shape change to play pranks on humans. So like, it's a little different in the way they do things. So like the fox, there is a fox subplot in this where he tricks this new amusement park guy into giving him a job and all this stuff. And like, he's like, tells the raccoons, you need to live like humans and let the others die. Like we had to do that with our non-shape changing foxes, survival of the fittest. So
pretty harsh.
Yeah, he was a very harsh character, but it was harsh, but he also told the truth, because these guys couldn't stop the development. And that's what it came down to in the end, regardless, is that you had to adapt to survive, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a lot about this movie, but there's not much about this movie at the same time.
Yeah, it comes down to the basic theme of humans suck and they don't care about the environment.
And they should, because animals have feelings too.
Exactly.
Just like the Lorax.
Well, and there's even the very end of the movie, one of the last things is one of the raccoons breaks the fourth wall, looks at the camera and says, hey, some of us can shape change and live with the humans, but what about the rabbits and the badgers and stuff like that? When you develop these lands, like they can't adapt, like they have nowhere to go and you're killing them off. It just blatantly tells the audience, hey, dude, you guys suck. Like, pay attention. So, good message. Interesting movie. Interesting visuals. I did. One of the things about the visuals that I liked, and it was really showcased in the fight, is there was different levels of animation for the raccoons. Like sometimes they'd draw them as an actual raccoon dog, and then most of the time they're standing on 2 feet because they're like, most people don't know when humans aren't around, they walk on 2 feet. And when they do that, if they're being more serious, they draw them like all like more human and more detail and all this stuff. And when they're being silly and celebrating, or when they're fighting and they're being the ones beaten down by the other group, they draw them more cartoony and like,
yeah, the design gets a little simpler.
Yeah. And I thought that was a really cool touch for like, whatever mood they're in is a different animation. And I was like, that's a really interesting touch in there. So there's a lot to like about this movie. I think, like I said, its only downfall for me was that it got a little long. Could have been cut down a little. But I don't know if you have anything else to add about this.
I guess, yeah, we should move on. Would you recommend this movie?
Yeah, I would.
Absolutely. I think you should watch it at least once, especially if you're a fan of animation and if you're a fan of Studio Ghibli.
I will say I watched this one with my 9-year-old because, I mean, as anybody who listens to this knows, that she's the one I watch lots of movies with. And,
well, what'd she think of it?
She enjoyed it. She liked it. Well, and she heard them saying pouches the whole time. And I'll just tell you, we're very honest with, like, we're very open with the girls and like the way we talk to them. And I said, I said, they're saying pouch for that whole thing, but you can clearly tell it's their nutsack. And yes, I did use the word nutsack with my daughter, with my 9-year-old daughter. She goes, do you think as much as I know about animals, I don't know what that was?
Yeah, at that point, if you know a lot about animals, then you're gonna come across that.
But we got a kick out of that because then I went upstairs and my wife was upstairs and I came up with Elsa and I go, oh, so we just watched our movie. I said it was about a bunch of shape-shifting raccoons with large nut sacks, and she's like, what are you showing my daughter? I go, it was a kids movie. It was even like done by G Kids and Disney. So yeah, so it's no, my daughter liked it too, so I would recommend this movie.
Speaking of knowing a lot about animals, there's a famous story, at least in my family, of when my older sister was pretty young. They were going to the zoo and they saw an elephant, and she was like, it was a male elephant. So then she was like, what you do when you're young, you count things. She was probably like 4 or 5. She goes, why does this elephant have 5 legs?
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet that was fun to explain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what about you? You said you recommend it too, so.
Highly recommend this, and now we're going to move on to probably one of my favorite things we do is called Double Feature, where if we liked a movie, what should go with it, and if we disliked a movie, what you should watch instead. We clearly both like this movie, and I guess the good thing to do would be pair Ghibli with Ghibli. So for mine, I'm going to go with Princess Mononoke, which has a similar theme, but that one's definitely a little tighter, definitely more of an action-focused, more mature film. It's Princess Mononoke is mine.
Okay, I'm going to go with a very similar theme, very heavy-handed about the environment and taking down forests. And you actually mentioned it earlier, Fern Gully.
Nice.
With Robin Williams as Batty and Tim Curry as the bad guy.
Tim Curry as the Smoke Man.
Yes. So similar theme. This one's rainforest getting knocked down, displacing. And isn't it like fairies or something like that in this fairy one? So yeah, I'd recommend this one with Fern Gully.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called Fern Gully: The Last Rainforest, right?
Something like that.
So yeah, and then on to the final segment. We're going to see what we're going to watch.
What are we going to do next?
All right, all genres. Score 70 or better. Spin it.
Spin the win. Spin the win.
Okay, we got one it's on HBO Max, the Criterion Channel, and Canopy.
Ooh.
We have On the Run After Murdering a Man, accountant William Blake encounters a strange North American man named Nobody who prepares him for his journey into the spiritual world.
Huh.
You know this?
No.
This is a Johnny Depp starring vehicle.
Oh, no.
From director Jim Jarmusch called Dead Man.
Jimmy Jarmusch. We've talked about him before. It'll be interesting to see what we think.
Yeah. Did we do one of his movies before?
I know I briefly talked about Dead Don't Die.
That's right.
I've talked about his other film, I think, like the one he made about Elvis, or like The Ghost of Elvis or something.
Okay. Yeah, this will be interesting. I've seen one or two of his films, and I can't say I've been a huge fan, but like people seem to like Dead Man, I think. But people liked what was that? Only Lovers Left Alive, with Tom Hiddleston and what's her face,
Tilda Swinton.
Oh, hated that movie. So dull. So we'll see what we have to say about Dead Man. Maybe it'll surprise me. Maybe there is a good Jim Jarmusch movie out there.
Too bad it's not the DC Comics Dead Man.
That'd be great. I want a good Dead Man movie.
It's such a great concept too. So in the DC Comics, Dead Man is this guy named Boston Brand. He used to be a circus performer, and then he gets shot and killed. So then he becomes a ghost, and then he has the ability to possess people. So sometimes he finds himself working with other heroes, but also it's the original story is fundamentally about like what if it's a supernatural version of something like The Fugitive?
Yeah,
trying to find out who killed him.
Dead Man's always been a favorite character of mine. I like him. But we're gonna watch Johnny Depp in Dead Man. And we'll see how that goes. Like I said, HBO Max, Criterion, or Canopy, you can watch that on.
Until then, watch out for your nuts.
Till then, come sail away. Come sail,
come sail away. Come sail away on my nuts. And don't forget to like, subscribe, all that sort of thing. Find us on social media. On Twitter, I'm at Noah_Saturn. That is spelled SATERN.
And I am at AwesomeKM. And we're on Instagram at We Don't Know What to Watch. And you can email us at We Don't Know What to Watch at gmail.com. And yeah, D's nuts.
Watch out for them Tanuki.